That's it. I've had it. I am so done. I've heard too many people reach out over the last couple of days and arguably even weeks asking what happens next with XRP. What are you doing with your portfolio? Are you currently investing? Are you currently selling? Is it really over? Is the bull market over, considering April 2nd, Trump is going to implement some reciprocal tariffs with other nations to make things fair? But markets have consistently been selling off and everyone's arguably in a panic, and I can see why. Considering it's been a period of 73 days now, we failed to break for some new all-time highs. Our prior all-time high we're currently down about 37% off of, and even on the dumps we were down 48% on XRP and to the tune of 45% on the most recent low. And to make matters even worse, even with the Trump pump, where we pumped really hard from about $2.13 all the way up to $3. This news right here was due to the fact that Donald Trump said we would be adding XRP to a crypto reserve in the United States. You would have expected something like that to put the price well above the recent all-time high on January 16th at 340, yet it failed to actually happen. Then markets actually continued dumping even harder for a newer low right here on March 11th. And yet again on March 19th, I will go ahead and mark it on the chart right here. The team over at Ripple and Brad Garlinghouse basically stated that the wait is officially over and that the SEC will completely drop its appeal. Within that same time frame, and I believe week, you had Stuart Alderodi coming out and telling people, and by the way, that's the chief legal officer over at Ripple, that they were officially going to be paying $50 million instead of $125 million. The rest would be sent back to Ripple. And here is the price action on that day. You can see it failed to format and actually take us for a new range high above the $2.60 range. And so if anything, this looks to be now a resistance, and arguably that $3 range failed to show any follow through as well. So whenever you see a situation like this where you get major range lows and the new low comes in lower than the prior low, and by the way, even with wicks, especially if you turn that off, we had a lower close right here. We had a lower close on the highs. We are officially in a new intermediate term downtrend. But where things get really scary is arguably below that $2.25 range, which we are going to talk about shortly. And I don't want to go and say, hey, I'm a complete and total bear for the rest of the year, because I think things could actually turn around. However, it might not happen anytime soon, and it would need to happen sooner rather than later. Otherwise, this thing is done. And by the way, there's an old phrase in crypto, actually even just the entire market, which is sell in May and look away, because the summers are typically very slow, dreary, boring months. But the last time that we had a situation where we broke down for some new major lows into a potential bull market was in 2020 and then again in 2021. As you can see here, the market ranged for a period of about 131 days before breaking out for a new range high and going for its high of the year. Now again, this was a very weak pump for XRP, considering back here also you had that SEC lawsuit, but it was a very bullish environment. So even in the birth of the SEC lawsuit back here in December of 2020, you can see that XRP performed well. Why? Because it was a bull market for the rest of crypto. All of crypto is doing well. In other words, a rising tide raises all ships. That would include XRP, which means the same is true if the entire bull market is over and we are officially now in lower tides. The tides are pulling back out to the ocean. Then guess what that means? XRP is also going to fail to do well. Now, when I pull up a chart of XRP versus Bitcoin and put it on a percentage scale, as you can see, going back to those major lows in November and October of 2024, XRP is still up tremendously relative to Bitcoin. In other words, it would have been far better to buy and hold XRP, considering you'd be up about 300% versus Bitcoin's measly 12%. And this is a time where Bitcoin tends to do well, especially if you start to look at charts on Bitcoin and its history. In other words, the 4-year Bitcoin cycle seems to be dead, as there is a significant deviation from the norm. I'll go ahead and pull this price chart up. As you can see, that this right here would be the time of the halving across all major bull market cycles from 2012, 2016, 2020, and now 2024. And in typical fashion, by this period in time, you can see almost every single time Bitcoin pumped extremely hard. 2012, here we have 2016. And by the way, in 2016 all the way into 2020, things pumped really hard, generally speaking. But even in 2020 right here, you can see that Bitcoin continued to move higher to the upside and put some new all-time highs. Whereas right now, Bitcoin has actually failed to break out and has been ranging for quite some time. And we'll go ahead and dive into that chart as well. So yes, right now things aren't looking too good for all markets, but even in this situation, you can see that as of the recent range high on December 3rd of 2024 for XRP, which is the price action that you're actually seeing, the green line is Bitcoin. Both are trading very correlated, right? You're seeing a pump right here in this range. Oops, let me go ahead and do that. You can see a pump right here. You can see a pump on XRP. Yes, XRP pumped way harder. Then you can see in this range, they both dumped in fashion. And then right here, they're pumping a little bit and now they're dumping together. And so there is a positive correlation, which means it's going to be very hard for XRP to do anything if Bitcoin remains in a downtrend. So although it does look relatively stronger, it's probably the better asset to hold in an environment where Bitcoin dumps really hard. XRP is going to dump as well. So the real question is this bull market over? Should you be accumulating? Should you be selling? These are questions that have been asked over and over and over again. And so I'm going to give you my perspective on what's actually happening in the market. And by the way, if you had joined Altcoin Pro University over the last month, I've been hosting calls every single Tuesday that are private only for our university members. You can find the link in the description below, bullrunners.com, to check it out. You would land on a page like this. We have live calls, and in those calls, I cover everything I do not cover on the channel and simply don't have the time to. But if you come over to Calendar, you can see every single Tuesday at 4, I am hosting a technical analysis call where I dive into the charts. I answer questions. I'm live with our university members, and the value is bar none some of the best in the space. We have other live calls as well. We have tons of paying members, and that's because the value is some of the best in the game. Not only do we have a library full of a ton of courses and classes, we even have strategies and guides on crypto research tools, when to buy, when to sell, how to organize a portfolio, and staking with a DeFi wallet in XRP, psychology, the dangers, how to avoid getting rugged or scammed, and how to get ahead of narratives and trends before they actually occur. And the reality is this is probably the best value you'll ever find in crypto. And so if you want to check that out, go to bullrunners.com. If you want to be on that next live call on Tuesday to get your take here before I share it on the channel. Again, I've been talking about this stuff over the last 4 weeks of what I've been doing with my portfolio. And if you've been on those calls, you would know that I've covered everything I'm about to cover in this video, which means you would have been ahead of the curve and likely would have protected yourself against some of this downside. And people absolutely love those calls. But even Tom over here just a few days ago said he is so impressed with how fast Altcoin Pro University has advanced. The talent is unmatched and growing. The beauty of it is the people, the experience, the energy, and everything from the gains to the losses are posted. So there's transparency. I'm impressed by the team, but also the members. This is what makes it a premier platform. And yes, we have a lot of people earning all sorts of capital, even in the down markets, because they're putting their money inside of yield earning opportunities, which you can only get access to inside of this platform. So go ahead and check out bullrunners.com. Link is in the description. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain by checking it out. Worst case scenario, it saves you a lot of downside if you've been wondering what's going to happen next. And so I just showed you a chart looking back at 2021. In typical situations where Bitcoin and all markets start to pump and rally pretty hard, you actually see a situation where it takes no more than 30 to 60 days. But in this situation, if I come over and look at the chart on Bitcoin, we had a major range high right back here on November 24th. Our all-time highs came in here for a double top on December 17th and January 20 respectively. And from that point in time, we remained in a range of about $91,000 all the way up to $106,000 with no closes above that for a period of 93 days. And when you see a situation like this, that's typically indicative of a local top. As you can see, the same thing happened right back here on February when we started ranging into the range up until March 4th of about $70,000. And we failed to break above $70,000 for a period of 140 days before we had some new major lows in the range and a breakdown to $50,000 from the $73,000 range. So that said, this looks like it might happen again. In other words, this is truly a deviation from the norm. And I'm not saying we're going to dump way lower, but chances are if we break below basically 82,000 at this moment in time, it's highly likely we're going back down to the $71,000 to $72,000 range, and my major range support would be somewhere in that $62,000 range right over here. And the reason is because that's a major range of support and arguably a major range of interest. So I'm going to go ahead and put that bar right there. As you can see, we have a lot of big bars right here in terms of volume, which is the VRVP. It's something that I train on inside of our live university calls. But that said, with the price action looking as it does, and the fact that the Trump pump could not hold the price higher, and now we're seeing a bunch of resistance here, chances are we are going lower. Now, again, it's important to remember that this isn't in a longer term uptrend. So even if we broke down to the $67,000 to $62,000 range, that still would put us in at a new higher low in a massive longer term uptrend. But this could happen over the course of the summer, and nobody wants to sit around in a losing position through the summer. But if that happens to XRP, because we have so much room to cover from right here at about a 75 cents up to the range of $2, chances are if we break below the $2 range right here, seeing as this is a textbook head, shoulder, and head, shoulder, head, shoulder for a head and shoulders, a breakdown below $2 and $1.95 is likely taking us to our next major range support, which is somewhere right down here to a $1.50 and even potentially a $1.10. So nobody wants to sit in a loss that big over this period of time. Now, the reality is if you've been an investor in these ranges below, from 30 cents all the way up to 70 cents, you're still massively in profit. But it might be safe to say, hey, nobody wants to see a major profit turn into a minor profit right here at a $1.15, a $1.10. And again, I'm not saying this is going to happen. So let me just be clear with you. I have 3 different investing portfolios. My first major portfolio is one where I invest very long term. I'm thinking 5 to 10 to 20 years out. In other words, I just dollar cost average into that portfolio and hold my position through all volatility because longer term, the trend is up. But when it comes to my swing trading positions, which is a smaller portion of my portfolio, in other words, I have about 60 to 70% of all of my money in my investments. Another 20 to 30% would be sitting into a swing trading position portfolio where I try to catch moves like this and then I get out and see if I can buy it lower. That said, I am officially all out of that portfolio. I am sitting totally in cash with about 20 to 25% of all of my money that was designed to be in crypto. So that said, I am out because this does not look good. And arguably the Bitcoin chart looks even worse. And whenever Bitcoin continues to break down, we'll go ahead and go back to that daily time frame, like right here, and fails to break back up into this range of $92,000 to like $90,000, chances are it's going to be a while. So let me go ahead and remove this because I really want to be clear. You can see that we were not only sold off on the Trump pump right here, but we're putting in new lower highs, and it's arguably going to happen that we see a new lower low below the range low of $78,000 for a touchdown somewhere at the $67,000 to $62,000 range. So that said, because we are in an intermediate term downtrend, because we are failing to break back up the $92,000 range and be supported there, and because we have so much resistance here, chances are XRP is going to see the same. It hasn't happened yet, but if XRP breaks down, this thing's likely breaking down bare bones minimum to at least a $1.50 and potentially even a $1.38 before seeing some level of support. And because this thing has had so much time in this range up here for a strong or a big old head and shoulders pattern of 120 days, when it does break down, it could be pretty violent and a lot of longs will be liquidated. So personally, here's what I think actually happens next. I think we're seeing a bit of long step into the market and try to support this price right here at about $1 or $2.13 to 15 cents in that range. I think it's possible and potential we try to rally one last time up to the $2.25 range, up to $2.38, and into this range we see probably some sort of a sell-off for a new lower high right here in an intermediate term downtrend with this obvious bull trap right here on the Trump pump. Then we break down, and if we touch this range one last time, by the way, chances are we are breaking down hard. And when we break down below the $2 range one last time, we are likely going to at least, I would say at least 155 to potentially even 140 range or lower. But chances are this breakdown is going to be pretty violent, and so I don't want to be in it, which means I've been protecting against risk. I'm not adding to my risk. I'm not actually even dollar cost averaging that much. I'm waiting to see what happens here. So yes, I do dollar cost average in my investment portfolio, but when I see a situation like this, even with discipline, I like to wait it out. I like to wait to see, do I get new lower lows, considering this is a pretty strong trend to the downside, and we have failed to put in a new low below this close right here at about $2. So whenever I see that happen, I am going to be relatively bearish, and currently I'm leaning more bearish than I am bullish, but that doesn't mean I'm selling all of my crypto. It simply means I need to be patient to see what happens next and whether or not I invest lower. And then for my swing trading position portfolio, you know what? I'm just all out. I'm sitting on cash, and I want to buy back in lower on something like XRP, which is still outperforming the majority of the market. But before I actually hop off this video for you, here's what I do want to say, and here's why I'm more bearish than bullish. It's the fact that we had probably the biggest pieces of news in XRP history since the lawsuit in 2020, right? The first one was the fact that Trump was going to be adding XRP to a crypto reserve for the US. That is probably the biggest news you'll ever hear. The price not only failed to pump above its previous all-time high, which came in at around $3.30 to $3.40, but the fact that it actually sold off really hard right thereafter, which leads me to believe that that means the market was exhausted, that even with the best news possible, XRP failed to put in a new high. In a very bullish environment, you would have seen it go for new all-time highs, but that did not happen. Then again, you saw the lawsuit and the appeal officially over right here on the 19th, and as you can see, that put in a new lower high. This high was lower than this high, which leads me to believe that we are officially in a new area of the market. This is a different market now, and because we are in a bearish environment, and this right here showed me that, I want to lean to the bear side. I want to wait for newer lows. And so these two pieces of information were huge tells, and this is stuff that I actually teach on a technical analysis side inside of Altcoin Pro University. So head on over to bullrunners.com, check the link out. If you want more information, if you want to be live on a call, if you have questions you want answered, go to Altcoin Pro University by checking out bullrunners.com. Link is in the description. I will see you on the other side. Thanks so much for watching the video, my friend. Till next time, goodbye.